Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Starr has essentially shut down, Trump's legal team has shut down impeachment even before the Senate trial technically has begun. But I want to read you this. This is the New York Times. This is really interesting, and this ties into Ken Starr, Trump's legal team. Robert Ray wanted to indict Clinton. He thinks Trump will be vindicated. As Ken Starr's successor, Mr. Ray ended up striking a deal that prevented Mr. Clinton from being prosecuted. This is really, really interesting. Mr. Ray was a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. How times have changed. When he was called to replace Mr. Starr and had plans to indict Mr. Clinton when he left office for the same crimes considered during Mr. Clinton's impeachment. On his way out of the Oval Office, Mr. Clinton and Mr. Ray struck a deal that would prevent Mr. Clinton from being prosecuted in connection to his affair with Monica Lewinsky, an unpaid White House intern, in return for surrendering his law license and paying a $25,000 fine. Okay, now, this gentleman is now part of President Trump's legal team. If you look at Ken Starr and the legal team's official rebuke and condemnation of the impeachment articles of impeachment, they've stated that they're invalid. Constitutionally invalid. Trump lawyers respond to articles of impeachment. They're constitutionally invalid, meaning that the same Democrats who say, well, Trump is tearing apart the fabric of our nation, the republic, it's actually the opposite. So, contrary to the belief among media and Democrats, Trump, his legal team, Trump supporters, independents, anyone who disagrees with the dogma, the ideology, the paradigm of Democratic Party liberal thought, we all have a difference of opinion. President Trump, this was not an impeachable offense. A phone call where Democrats believe he was trying to interfere in the next election is not an impeachable offense because they don't have any direct evidence that he was doing so. In their minds, that's what took place because that's how they see the world. They see the world through the lenses, through the vantage point of whatever harms our election chances is interference, and whether it's a foreign government or President Trump, it must end immediately. Because if people were just rational, the underlying notion here is if people were just rational and logical and lived life trying to do what's best for themselves, they would always vote Democrat. And the only reason people don't vote Democrat is because, interference. Interference from Russia with the DNC emails showing that Bernie Sanders was cheated. That kind of interference, that kind of interference. But this is really interesting. You look at Ken Starr, and it's like U.S. history has come full circle in terms of what we experienced in the 90s until today. So let's see. There's a great article on who is Ken Starr. So Trump legal team adds Ken Starr and Dershowitz for Senate trial. Then there's that gentleman I just mentioned. They're not going to touch Trump in the Senate. They're not going to touch him. Okay? How do I explain that? Democrats have placed a great deal of emphasis on historical record. They say, well, he's been impeached. He's the third president to be impeached. Oh, my God. How, it's unbelievable. Clinton, when he was impeached because Ken Starr, I'll just read you this. Who is Ken Starr? Trump. Okay, so President Donald Trump's impeachment legal defense team includes attorney Kenneth Starr, the independent counsel who became a household name in the 1990s when he headed up the investigation that led to former President Bill Clinton's impeachment. Starr was president, then chancellor of Baylor University. Okay. So, Starr's career, and it goes on to talk about role in Clinton's impeachment, the Whitewater investigation. In 1994, Starr was appointed independent counsel in an investigation of Bill and Hillary Clinton's involvement in a failed land deal dating back to Bill Clinton's tenure in Arkansas state government. When Bill Clinton was Attorney General of Arkansas and later governor, the Clintons invested in land as part of a joint venture that became the Whitewater Development Corporation. The corporation folded and the Clintons lost money on the real estate deal. Controversy over the deal was revived in the 1990s, however, after David Hale, a banker who had worked with the Clintons' business partners, alleged Clinton pressured him to make illegal loans to finance the Whitewater deal. A special prosecutor, Robert Fisk, was appointed in January 1994 to lead an investigation, and the inquiry expanded to include an investigation of Deputy White House counsel Vince... Okay, so... Clinton's critics... alleged, okay, so, well, this is really interesting. Okay, so Deputy Whitewater counsel Vince, January to lead an investigation. The inquiry expanded to include an investigation of Deputy Whitewater House counsel's Vince Foster's suicide. Clinton's critics alleged Foster's death had been part of a Whitewater cover-up, but multiple investigations concluded Foster's death was a suicide. Starr replaced Fisk in May 1994 as independent counsel. Clinton's relationship with White House intern Monica Lewinsky began in November 1995 and became part of the Whitewater investigation after co-workers notified investigators of her conversations with Lewinsky about the affair. The Starr report. This is just really interesting because it kind of it shows you that Democrats have already lost. They're not only, if Ken Starr is on Trump's legal team, they're not only fighting Trump and Ken Starr and the other attorney that was also a part of Clinton's impeachment. They're fighting their own history. They're trying to impeach President Trump, and the same person who impeached Clinton is now defending Trump. So 7 minutes into this, I'm kind of getting to the point. See what only Democrats could grasp any kind of victory from the jaw, any kind of defeat from any kind of victory, from the jaws of any kind of victory. The Starr report 3 years later in September 1998. So they're not battling Trump. They've fabricated and made up. President Zelensky stated there was no pressure. There's no direct evidence of anything. He didn't commit a crime. It's a phone conversation. Military assistance and aid was withheld only momentarily, like in the context of only, months. They eventually got the military assistance. Nothing, there was no crime, and the allegations never actually came to fruition. He never withheld assistance forever. And there were already investigations into Burisma even before Trump had that phone call with Zelensky. And Zelensky and Poroshenko both state there's no quid pro quo, but here... 3 years later, in September 1998, Starr's team released a 222-page report detailing its findings on Whitewater and other issues. The difference between the Trump-Russia nonsense is that Whitewater actually was a land deal with loans and with shady business dealings. That actually happened. There was no doubt that the Whitewater scandal was based on actual criminal activity and people that engaged in wrongdoing. The intelligence community, with a high confidence assessment, said Russia hacked the DNC. Then they investigated Trump based on a dossier. There was no evidence that anything actually happened. The United States government doesn't even know with certainty, I'm talking about with certainty, if the DNC was even hacked. Then they had no knowledge at all and no evidence that Trump was part of something that they didn't even realize that they admit might not have happened. They investigated Trump based on a high confidence assessment that something took place, based on a dossier that linked him to what they think took place. With Bill Clinton, he's impeached because he did have a relationship and he did lie about it under oath. If you want to say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, fine. If it's not that big of a deal, why did he lie about it? That's the issue here. With the Clintons, whether it's an email server or a relationship with an intern, they actually commit, or 500 conflicts of interest in the Clinton Foundation, they actually commit the wrongdoing. Trump did not. His thing, where's his tax returns? Well, your suspicion is not grounds to just get Trump's tax returns. You have to actually accuse him of a specific crime, which they haven't done. They have not done that. So, 3 years later, in September 1998, Starr's team released a 222-page report. The report concluded that Clinton's conduct in Whitewater and other firms, other matters, many constitute grounds for impeachment for perjury, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and abuse of power. The House of Representatives opened an impeachment inquiry a month later and voted to impeach Clinton for perjury and obstruction of justice. He lied under oath with the intent to deceive. That's the Clintons for you. The Starr report was highly controversial. Okay. So, Clinton's Senate trial. So, you're looking at, they're now, it's interesting because what Democrats have done is they've tried to utilize history. They've almost tried to inoculate themselves from their own misconduct and their own embarrassing episodes in American history. So what they did was they said, oh my God, this is with solemn, it's with solemn, this duty we have to impeach the president. We don't want to, but we have to. Well, A, nobody cares, and B, the guy who impeached, who the special counsel who impeached Clinton, it's almost the equivalent of Mueller working for Clinton. But Mueller working for Trump. I mean, it's kind of what's going on here, in a roundabout way. So they're done. They have nothing. They impeached Trump based on nonsense. They don't have any direct evidence that he withheld military assistance. Okay? They don't have any, and that he was worried about the No Malarkey bus tour, because that's nonsense in and of itself. Give me your thoughts below. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel right now if you want to support my work. My Patreon is below in the pinned comment. Can Starr on Trump's legal team, especially with his rebuke and his refutation, his condemnation of the articles of impeachment, but the House came out with this nonsense regarding removing the president because he's a danger to national security and all this. These ridiculous claims. Trump's legal team came out and said it's not constitutional. End of story. And it isn't. It isn't constitutional. They haven't even proved, forget about the fact that there's no criminal act, which they revel and they're happy about, which is hilarious. They haven't even proved that Trump engaged in the allegations they're leveling at him. Give me your thoughts below. Check out H.A. Goodman's other channel.